Ever since Tyler Lockett joined the Seahawks in 2015, he's been the definition of consistent. Although DK Metcalf may get most of the hype now, and believe me, there is a reason for that, Lockett has kinda always flown under the national radar. I mean, Russell Wilson himself is the leading MVP candidate so far this year, and he's called Lockett special, saying defenses just can't cover him. The connection between these two is incredibly valuable. I mean, in 2018 when Wilson targeted Lockett, he had a perfect passer rating. Yes, that stat is for the entire season. And similar to most of the Seahawks star players in this era, Lockett fell in the draft farther than he should have. So in this video, I guess you could call it a sequel to the wide receivers drafted before DK Metcalf video I made. We're going to go over the wide receivers taken before Tyler Lockett. Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota dominated the headlines for this draft, and they were the top two picks. The first wide receiver came off the board at number 4 when the Raiders snagged Amari Cooper. He was an absolute stud at Alabama, and now from a production standpoint, this pick appears to be the right one to make. So far, Cooper has led the draft class with over 5,600 yards and 35 touchdowns. In his first 2 years with the Raiders, he immediately became a top downfield threat in the league, but his third season in 2017 was a step back as he was battling an ankle injury, and about halfway through the 2018 season, the Raiders shipped him to the Cowboys for a first-round pick. And with that change of scenery, Cooper was back to his old self. Kevin White was selected just 3 picks later by the Bears. And well, let's just say the receiver taken right before him and right after him have had much different career paths. White burst into the national spotlight his senior year at West Virginia and parlayed that season into a top 10 NFL draft selection. Right away though, he just couldn't get onto the field. He didn't play a single game his rookie season, and during his Bears career, he played just 14 games with 25 receptions. After bouncing around the league for a bit, he's now a depth piece for the 49ers. At pick 14, the Dolphins drafted DeVante Parker. He's always had the look of an NFL receiver, fast, big-bodied track star. He didn't quite have the immediate splash Cooper had in the pros, but he was always flashing potential. In his first 4 years in the league, he was known as, I guess you could call it a Patriot killer. It seemed like he always had his biggest games against New England, and certainly contributed to some of those iconic Dolphins upsets. Then in 2019, he finally took off, eclipsing 1,200 yards and scoring 9 touchdowns. It'll be interesting to see how his production changes with a new quarterback in Tua Tagovailoa. Nelson Agholor was the 4th receiver taken in the first round, with the Eagles selecting him at 20. He never became the star receiver he was projected to be coming out of USC, which meant an unforgiving Philly crowd was never going to give him the credit that he might have deserved, especially when he was a key part on a championship-winning team. Still, even though he's on the Raiders now, we'll always have the best interview of all time to look back on when remembering his days in Philly.
My man just started throwing babies out the window. Wow. We was catching them, unlike AGHOLOR.
As you should know, every team, no matter the GM running things or how good their scouts are, has their drafting whiffs. And Brashad Perriman at 26th overall is one of those blunders for the Ravens. Perriman didn't participate in the NFL Combine, but he did run multiple sub-4.3 40-yard dash times at his pro day, and that propelled him to the first round. Just like Kevin White, he didn't end up playing in one game his rookie year. Really, it was just a combination of injuries, lack of production, and drop balls that kind of turned him into a villain in Ravens fans' eyes. His best year in the NFL came in 2019 with the Bucs' high-volume passing game. After that, he went to the Jets, where it seems nowadays that's just the place where too many careers go to die. Phillip Dorsett was the 6th receiver taken in the first round. The Colts weren't really expected to take a receiver here, and just to make things worse, Dorsett didn't really have much of an impact in Indy. After 2 years, he was swapped for Jacoby Brissett. So Dorsett spent 3 years in New England and once again often wasn't really a primary target. After the 2019 season, he signed with the Seahawks, becoming Tyler Lockett's teammate. But Dorsett landed on injured reserve and has yet to play a game in Seattle. Devin Smith was coming fresh off a national championship with Ohio State when the Jets selected him in the second round. And this stat pretty much sums up his Jets career. 1 touchdown, 2 torn ACLs. So obviously it's sad to see something like that happen. He would go on to catch another touchdown with the Cowboys in 2019. Little bit of a comeback story at least. And now he's with the Texans practice squad. At one point, DORIAL GREEN-BECKHAM had more hype to his name than anyone on this list. Coming out of high school, rivals had him ranked as the #1 overall prospect in the nation. He spent 2 years at Mizzou, which became tainted with his own behavioral problems. He was eventually dismissed and transferred to Oklahoma, where he never actually played in a game. Despite all that, the Titans still drafted him with the 40th pick in the draft. This pick was either going to be the steal of the draft or a massive mistake. In his rookie year, he had some games where he looked like a future Pro Bowler, but the Titans questioned his dedication and shipped him to the Eagles, where he was cut after just 1 year. He hasn't played in an NFL game since, and once again found himself in more trouble with the law. Devin Funchess emerged as a key role player for the Panthers' 15-1 season in 2015. 2 years later, he had his best season to date with over 800 yards and 8 touchdowns. But in 2018, he struggled during the back half of the schedule, which ended up being his final year as a Panther. He then signed a 1-year deal with the Colts, but was placed on injured reserve. This year, he was on the Packers roster, but ended up opting out. Finally, in the 3rd round, we have Tyler Lockett, the 10th receiver taken in his draft class. The only receiver ahead of him to score more touchdowns and put up more yards was Amari Cooper, the first one off the board. I think the main reason Lockett fell in the draft were his size and strength concerns. Of course, Lockett pretty much proved right away he was NFL ready when he was selected as a first-team All-Pro as a return specialist his rookie season. And now he's become a premier player for one of the top teams in the NFL, a team that prides itself on star players who fell in the draft. It's also worth mentioning that Stefon Diggs wasn't taken until the 5th round, and other notable receivers to wait late in the draft include Jamison Crowder and Darren Waller. Yes, back then Waller was a receiver, not a tight end. Still, there's one thing Lockett has over the rest of these guys. He's the only later round receiver talent to stick on the team that drafted him.